Welcome to Notable. Here I'm back. Okay. So welcome to Notable Approvals. I'm attorney Amanda Shaffer. Before I get to our case today, a few things. First, a reminder to make sure you like us and follow us on Facebook, and YouTube, and Twitter, and Instagram, and LinkedIn so that you don't miss any of our future lives. Also, next Wednesday, March 3rd at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be having our episode 3 of Are You Smarter Than a Naturalized Citizen? It's the battle of the Illinois state-born. Two of our contestants were both born in Illinois. They will be going head-to-head to see who can answer 10 questions first. Now, it was 12 questions that you had to answer correctly before. That was when they changed to the 2001 or 2020, whatever they called it, version of the naturalization test. The Biden administration announced this week that they will be going back to the 2008 version, which only required you to get 6 out of 10 questions right, just so we can give our viewers a little bit more idea of what the questions are. I think 10 is a good number. So we will see whether attorney Becca Nyberg or attorney Farah Kazi can get to those 10 questions first. We invite you all to join. It's a lot of fun and teaches you a lot about American history and about the naturalization process. So mark your calendar, set your reminders, go to our Facebook page. You can find the event and mark that you're going or interested so you don't miss it. Anyways, I've been away for a while because I've been very busy, which is a good thing. But it's hard to keep up with all these notable approvals and whatnot when we have so much else going on. So I'm glad to be back with a really, really exciting approval today to talk about. This is for a client who is a native and citizen of Russia. Now, there are several reasons I want to talk about this case. First of all, he was granted asylum after his asylum interview. He didn't have to go to the immigration court. I'll get to the filing when it was filed and everything, but it only took a few months after he finally submitted it, which was fantastic. He had an incredibly strong case, so we had no doubt that his asylum application would eventually get granted. But as I've mentioned before on notable approvals when talking about asylum cases, that if you have any little, what's the best word? I guess issue with your case, meaning like you may have a really strong case about asylum, why you were persecuted, or why you will be persecuted if you return to your country. But there's a lot of other requirements that you have to meet, and sometimes there are other things that, if it occurred in your facts, will present a problem where the asylum office doesn't want to make a decision and just refers it to the immigration judge, which is incredibly common. So, for example, if you leave your country and then you return to your country where you're claiming that if you return again, you'll be persecuted, if your persecution occurred, if you're saying it occurred before you left the first time, they're going to question, well, why did you go back if you're so afraid? And usually, no matter what the reason is, it's very rare for the asylum office to grant an asylum application when that issue is presented, even when there's a perfectly good reason for it. And so that's just one issue. In this case, we had multiple issues, which I'll get to shortly. And that's the only reason why we had doubt that the asylum office may not grant it right away. And, look, it's very few applications do get granted right after your asylum interview. The majority of people, even if they have a strong case and no hiccups, end up going to an immigration judge and waiting for a while before they're granted. So getting it granted after the interview to begin with is really hard to do. But especially in a case like this, and I'll explain what all the problems were. So the first thing was that our client came to us 2 weeks before the 1-year filing deadline. The deadline I'm talking about, if you're unaware, is if you're filing for asylum, with very, 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 very few exceptions, you have to apply within 1 year of entering the US. If you don't apply within a year of entering the US, you're not eligible for asylum unless you qualify for one of the very rare exceptions. And you're only eligible for what's called withholding of removal. It can only be granted by the immigration judge, and it doesn't give you permanent resident status. You can't leave the country. You can't naturalize. You can stay here, work forever, but clearly there's a lot of drawbacks. And if you can get asylum, that's what you want to do. So when someone comes to us 2 weeks before, and I do not advise this because it's very stressful, and I don't like rushing to do work. I like to do it the right way. So when we have to rush, of course, you run the risk of making a mistake or not being able to include everything you wanted to because you can't wait on things. So we worked really, really hard to get this thing out as quickly as possible. And we were able to get it filed 1 day before his 1-year deadline. So he was perfectly fine. And that was March. It was March, not March. December. So December 3rd, 2019, or 2019 was December 4th, 2019 would have been the 1-year deadline. We got it filed December 2020 was the 1-year deadline. We got it filed 2 days before that. But then January 16th, we get a rejection from the USCIS Asylum Office. And the rejection notice has a receipt date of March of, we're almost in March, that's why, of December 2nd, 2020. But we didn't get the rejection until January 16th. And the reason it was rejected was for a reason that a lot of people have been dealing with lately. Biden administration just came out and said they're not doing this anymore. Hopefully they won't, but this has happened before. And that is when a form is rejected for not putting N/A for not applicable or none in any space on the form that you don't fill in, any blank space. So they want 0 blank spaces. And this is not, prior to 2020, prior to 2017, we've had this problem with USCIS every so often that they just decide, especially with asylum applications, it happens a lot also with T visas and U visa applications where they want every single blank to have N/A, even if it's really clear that it's not that you forgot to fill it in, it just doesn't apply. Even if it says fill in, if it applies, it doesn't say on the form or instructions to fill in. Anyways, it's very arbitrary and capricious action by USCIS and very frustrating and infuriating as an attorney to have to deal with this. So we get it back, and not only are they wrong about the policy, but in this case, we actually did fill it in. There are certain parts on an asylum application that have kind of like a grid. So one of these sections, for example, is like list your parents and your siblings, and there's I'll draw it real quick so this makes sense because it's here we go. Should have thought of this before, right? Okay, I think there's 2. Yeah, it looks something like this. Basically, this box will be for the name of the family member, where the person was born, city and country, and then where the person resides now. And this is mom, dad, and then there's room for like 4 or 5 siblings. So this is all one question. This is like part, I don't know what part it is, but it's like part whatever, number 3. And number 3 is all of it. So we filled in his mom, we filled in his dad, but he had no siblings. So we didn't fill in the rest of it, which is very common, which we've done plenty of times. And that is why they said it was not filled in properly, or was missing NAs. So what did I do? As soon as I got it back, first I screamed and ranted into a pillow, to my dog pillow back here. And then I immediately wrote the NAs in and sent it back, telling them, look, this is the original receipt date, you're wrong here. We didn't leave it blank. We filled it in. We just filled in what we had to. So we finally get the receipt notice, and now it says January 22nd. Now, again, we've dealt with things like this before, so we knew that the law said it should be the initial receipt date, even though it was rejected initially, because first of all, they're supposed to return rejections within 30 days. It was more than that, but even barring that, it's not fair for somebody, unless like you made a mistake that you didn't complete, like you didn't, I don't even know about signing, but I'd say like if you didn't, you have to do something really wrong for the rejection to not count as of the initial date. So this wasn't one of those. So we knew that, but we also knew that, again, they want to give us a hard time. If we had a different president right now, they may have still be giving us a hard time. We don't know, but we know how USCIS is, and we knew it might be a problem. So we did have him prepared. He told us he could handle the interview himself against our advice. In a case like this, we do believe your best chance of getting granted, have your attorney with you. But, you know, luckily it all worked out, so that's great for him. But we did make sure he had everything he needed to prove that first part. Now, getting to the other issues in the case, that was just one. On top of that, so this client, like I said, he's from Russia, and he's a gay man, member of the LGTBQ community. He's also HIV positive. We'll start with the LGBTQ claim. He has been picked on since he was little, really little, grade school, because people thought he was different. He didn't come out as being gay, but you know, the way he dressed, the way he acted, he would get beaten on. He would be called, you know, homosexual slurs, things like that. So in 1991, hi, Tanya. Hi, Alvarez. Oh, hi, Lambert. New name. I like it. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. This is a good case. I'm glad you guys can watch. Oh, I got a wave to a few people on Instagram. Okay. So in 1991, he needed to get out of Russia. So he went to China for school. And he stayed there until 1997 on a student visa, and he knew he couldn't go back to Russia because if he was outed, he would be arrested and persecuted and all those horrible things. Now, obviously, if you know anything about China, China's not exactly gay friendly. In fact, I don't know which one's worse, Russia or China, but the fact that I don't know that means they're both pretty bad. They both don't accept people for being gay or HIV positive can be a huge problem. It is crazy, Tanya. But he was, you know, at least there, nobody knew him and he was doing okay. Things became a lot harder for him in 2015 when, as part of his renewing his work visa in China, and it was only a temporary, so every 2 years he had to renew it, he learned he was HIV positive, which became a problem for him because they're not very accepting of it in China. They didn't have medication for him to take in China. He had to actually go to Thailand, leave the country, go to Thailand to get medication. He couldn't get the medication in Russia either. So, and if you're not aware, there's a very big stigma attached to HIV, especially among the gay community. Not so, much less so in this country these days. It used to be bad, but in those countries, it still very much is. So he was already, he was already living in the closet in the second place that he was residing in China, where he could not remain permanently anyways, because he didn't have a permanent visa. He wasn't eligible for a permanent work visa. He couldn't get married because they don't allow gay marriage. So he knew he had to get out. Now, living in another country, if you leave your country where you're claiming persecution, you go to another country, either you're claiming persecution in the second country or will be persecuted in the second country, or you can't, you're only there for a short period of time, or, all different types of things. You could be persecuted for even a different reason than the other country. Point is, anytime you leave your country and you go to another country before coming to the US, especially if you live there for an extended period of time, you need to explain, A, why you didn't apply for any type of legal status there, B, why you didn't apply for asylum there, C, why it was so safe for you to stay there all this time, even if it wasn't on a permanent basis, but then all of a sudden you left. So he had all those issues to face. And in this case, it all made sense. Like I said, nobody knew him there. He did meet somebody eventually that he wanted to be in a relationship with. They tried to be in a relationship together in China. They couldn't. Gay parties would get shut down. They couldn't be affectionate in public. It just, they weren't going to be able to spend their life there. And that was clear. But then again, when he became HIV positive, it became a bigger problem. So in his statement, and we provided evidence to back this up, we explained that, look, China's just as bad as Russia when it comes to being, anti-homosexual. It wasn't safe for him to stay in China. But even if there was any, even if it was slightly better than Russia, even if there was an argument, which I don't think there is, the problem was that you can't get asylum in China for being gay. And he only had a temporary work visa that literally every 2 years he had to renew, which is like, if anyone who's on a temporary work visa in the US, like an H-1B, knows that there's never a guarantee that you're going to get it renewed. There's different laws over there, of course, with temporary visas. I don't know if he could have indefinitely done it, but the fact of the matter is that it wasn't a permanent solution for him. And he had these other issues. So we were able to explain, and I'm sorry if I'm going too fast. I'm trying not to. Thank you, Tanya. Well, I wasn't putting up our comments. I forgot. But yes, she did get a green card. I'm so happy that you are living the American dream, Tanya. That is awesome. I love to hear that. So and this client is now too. But anyways, point is that we were able to explain it, but especially with only having less than 2 weeks, it wasn't easy, but we did it. Then there's the other problem and this is another common issue with asylum applications that people have to deal with. And that is, if you leave your country where you're claiming persecution, and then you return to that country for any reason, now you have another hurdle. You have to explain, why did you go back there if you weren't safe to go back? And that's not always easy, especially in this case, where this client had returned 5 separate times to Russia. And he had stayed anywhere from a few days to I think the most was 20 days. No, I think the least was 24 hours, less than 24 hours. The most was 20 days. So what we did in order to try to preemptively deal with this issue and not have him have to go see a judge was we made a chart of all the exact dates that he went back to Russia, where he went and what he was doing, and had him explain why, in his statement, why it was okay, or not okay, but why it was safe for him to return for this temporary period of time 5 times over, 2, almost 3 decades, and why he can't go back now. And we were able to show that, first of all, he only went back for specific reasons, like to renew his passport, to see his mother. I think, did he have another reason? Oh, and the other thing was he wasn't out in Russia. People suspected he was gay, but they didn't know he was gay. And he didn't tell people he was coming back. His mom didn't tell people he was coming back. So he kind of stayed to himself when he did go back. And he flat out said, look, it wouldn't have been safe for me to remain. It was a risk going back, but I had to for these reasons. And then we also tied in, I definitely can't go back there permanently. I can't live my life, and I can't go back to China. So again, I 100% felt that he was going to get granted asylum, but I did not think that USCIS would grant it after the interview. I really thought we would have to go see the judge, and then it would get granted whenever. I mean, New York courts have been closed now forever, but whenever that may be. So it was quite a relief. But the only reason we were able to, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot one other thing. The other reason why now it wasn't safe for him to return to Russia permanently is because of his HIV. He needs medication, and you can't get that in Russia. And if you have HIV in Russia, they do assume that you're homosexual, and then it's a problem for you. So that was another thing thrown into a wrench, and another wrench thrown into it. And the fact of the matter is that even if, let's just say hypothetically, prior to 2015, it was safe for him to return to Russia. Then he gets diagnosed with HIV. That is a new ground of persecution. That is a new particular social group, people who are HIV positive. So we also made the argument that, look, it's now even more not safe to return. Now he has another reason it's not safe. So even if it was before, now it's not. And that's, again, we've had those granted with no problem, but the asylum office does not only likes to grant straightforward cases where there's no issues, no flags, no obstacles, no criminal history, no returns to your country, no extended periods of time spent in other countries. If you've been following the immigration news the past few years, where the Trump administration tried to say if you even walk through another country and don't apply for asylum, you'll be ineligible. That is not in effect right now. That was blocked by the courts. But where that stemmed from was the fact that there is a requirement in the law. You prove, if you did go into another country first, that why you didn't apply for asylum. And, so it can range. It can be for any reason. One being, like in China, there's no asylum protection for homosexuals. What's he going to apply for? So we were thrilled. I mean, when he told me this was yesterday, I was so happy for him, because I know how stressful it is. Thank you, Uzu Manu. I hope I pronounced that right. And hello, Emmanuel. Thank you for joining us. I know how stressful it is for clients when they apply for asylum and then they have to wait so long for their final hearing and before the immigration judge, and not just how hard it is for them, but how hard it can be for us, because with the passage of time comes certain problems like country conditions change. I don't think 5 years from now it'll be unfortunately will be safe for LGBTQ to live openly and freely in Russia, but I've had other countries for other issues where the tide changed and our argument became a lot harder. So you have that. If you do have witnesses, they can die or become unavailable. And then your memory fades. Like, you're telling this whole story that's fresh on your mind. You're safe in the US for a long time, and it could be a lot harder to remember all your facts, 5 years down the line when you're in court in a high pressure situation. Well, Tanya, that is very nice. I know I've been going for a while here. They're normally shorter than this, but this is a really important one. And Tanya says, let's share this live, because with these new changes, a lot of people need a good lawyer, and Amanda and Aaron is the one lawyer, the two lawyers that there. Thank you, Tanya. Yes, please do share this as much as you desire. I hope you do, because I want people to see this and learn from it, especially if you're applying for your own case and you have some of these problems. There's hope that you might not have to wait years and years and years to see a judge. If you handle all these problems at the outset, you address them all, you show your proof, you can get around the problems and get it granted by the asylum office if you have a really strong case like this. So, like I said, a lot of obstacles here, a lot of hard work that we had to do really quick to get it out. And I beg of you, I beg of you, if you're watching this and you're thinking of whether, even if it's not us, if you're any lawyer to help you with your case, don't wait until the last minute, no matter what it is, even if it's asylum or, anything where you have some type of deadline. You're not just making your lawyer's life harder, you're making your own life more harder and decreasing your chances of getting the benefit that you seek. Because, we were able to do this really quickly. Not every lawyer, and not even us at all times, could have gotten this out that fast. We do everything we can when someone comes to us with a deadline, no matter when it is, to get things in timely, but that can mean sacrificing waiting on certain evidence because we don't have the time. So you don't want that to happen to you, because that could have made the difference here of him being granted after the interview, or whenever his hearing is in like 5 years, and this whole time him being stressed and not knowing what's going on. And there was another point I wanted to make about that. Oh yeah, and then when you have a deadline, like in this case, and you wait until the last minute, although if you can get it timely filed and there's a problem like I described earlier, there is a way around it. Well, not around it essentially, but you can still be considered timely filed even if they reject it for some reason. But again, you're decreasing your chance of it getting granted right after the interview. And there's no guarantee that you're not, like in another case, asylum cases get referred to the immigration court, they don't get denied unless you're still in status. But for a change of status, for example, you can just get a denial and then maybe you won't even be able to appeal it depending on what the denial is for. Or now you have to appeal it and spend more money. And I know my client was really stressed after it was rejected. I was too. I was pissed that they took so long to get it back to us. I was pissed they put the wrong date on the receipt notice. And I was really worried that was going to be the reason he had to go to immigration court. And it's not fair. It really isn't. But there's nothing really that can be done. You can't. Good luck. Go sue the government for that. You're not going to win, unfortunately. So you want to give yourself enough time to get it submitted with the correct evidence, all the evidence, time to review everything, think out the case, because this is all really complicated. There's a lot. I mean, this file was this big by the time I submitted it. There was a lot of moving parts here that we had to address, and that's generally the case. So act sooner rather than later. If you're even thinking about applying for asylum, or if you're in the US and you're thinking, I'm only here on a temporary basis and I want to remain in this country, the sooner you can talk to an immigration lawyer and at least, even if you don't get started, know when you have things due, know what your plan is going to be, the better off it is going to be for you in the end. Now, this is an outlier, this case, because this, again, I think a lot of it had to do with how strong his asylum claim was, because there's no question he's deserving of asylum. There's just no question he was qualified. But it doesn't mean he wasn't going to face some bad luck with the officer interviewing him. Maybe the officer interviewing him was new, sees the 1-year deadline thing and doesn't look into why it was late, or doesn't care why it ended up that it was on time and now late. That, you have a lot of luck of the draw when it comes to dealing with immigration. So you want to try to make your case as straightforward and easy as possible for USCIS, which takes a lot of stress off yourself, and it also helps your lawyer do the best job that he or she can do. So there was a lot that I talked about today. A quick wrap up. Why this case was notable. That number one, this client gave us less than 2 weeks. He came to us for the first time, less than 2 weeks before his 1-year asylum deadline. And that was a big problem if we couldn't get it filed on time, because then he's no longer eligible for asylum. But we did. Number two, even though we did, it got rejected for a frivolous reason by USCIS that hopefully that's supposed to have been addressed now going forward. But you never know with the mail. The last few months, mail's been terrible. So you never know with the mail, and you never know if the person making the decision is really going to understand the rule. So you're putting yourself at risk of not being able to get granted your benefit right away. And that risk can mean years and years and years added on to your case. So that's the first thing. Number two, this client lived in China, I think he said for 28 years, which is a long time to live in another country. And you live in another country for that long, you got to have a good reason why you can't live there permanently. Of course, in this case, you can't be LGBTQ in China. They have law. I'm pretty sure they have laws against it. I know you can't marry. I know you can't live openly. I know they persecute gay people. So it's not like he could live there permanently, but he clearly had been safe for 28 years there. That had to be explained. And those cases usually end up in immigration court. And then finally, he returned to Russia 5 times over the years, although sometimes less than 24 hours, up to 20 days. And we had to, go through that whole explanation of, well, why can he go back? Why was he able to go back then, even if it was temporary, but now he's saying he can't go back at all. So we were able to address all of that. Fortunately, it was granted. And like I said, we're incredibly happy for this client that he can now have peace of mind. In less than a year now, he's eligible to apply for his green card. I know he's excited and looking forward to it, and so are we. And then 4 years after that, he'll be eligible to become a U.S. citizen. And he won't have to spend all this money on attorneys and stress going to court and, just waiting for a judge to make a decision. So, this is really when you have a really strong claim for asylum and you're filing within that 1 year, this is the outcome you're hoping for. So we're really excited about that for him. So that is all today for notable approvals. One more reminder or two more reminders before we go to first like us, follow us so that you don't miss on Facebook, all those places. So you don't miss another live, and tune in next Wednesday, March 3rd at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Central Time, where immigration attorney Farah Kazi will be facing off against immigration attorney Becca Nyberg in Are You Smarter Than Naturalized Citizen, Episode 3. This will be the Battle of the Illinois Born. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. It'll actually be slightly different questions than you've heard in the first 2 episodes, since we're going back to the 2008 test, which means I have to, thank you USCIS, redo my entire game board. But I'm happy to do it since the 2008 test is a lot easier. But it's still challenging, and I do expect our contestants to get some wrong, and I'll get to show the little dunce guy. If you've seen, and you can catch the last episodes on our Facebook page, in our Instagram. You could see when someone gets the wrong answer. There's a little emoji guy with the dunce cap that is crying. So he makes everyone laugh. It's a silver lining when someone gets the answer wrong. But anyways, it's a lot of fun. I encourage you to watch, especially if you're studying right now for your naturalization test. Find out what some of the questions are, learn a little bit, have some fun. So you can go to the event page and like it. Set your reminder if you like us already, or follow us on Facebook or Instagram. It should pop up automatically when we go live next Wednesday night. That is all now for notable approvals. Thank you all for joining us. You're welcome, Lambert. And I will be back hopefully on Monday if I have the time, because I got some crazy stuff going on here. A lot of work, a lot of good stuff. And I really have some other exciting cases to talk about. So hopefully Monday, if not next week, I will be back with another notable approval. Thank you all for watching. I hope to see you next week, and have a great weekend.